Hey everyone, Lewis from LV1 Gaming back with another review. This time it is Godstrike from Freedom Games and developed by Overpowered Team. Godstrike is a twin-stick shooter, bullet hell boss rush game where time is your health and currency. That is a mouthful, but don't worry, I'll break it down for you here. Of course, be sure to check out the written review as this video is more of a complimentary piece to the written review and the link is in the description. As sad as it is to say, at the beginning of this review no less, the story is window dressing and can be ignored. I also don't say this as a jab towards the game. Video games back in the day were all about the gameplay. The stories were treated as an afterthought or were non-existent. That being said, the game does make an attempt at telling a compelling story with a cool opening cutscene that looks straight out of the opening from The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. The opening tells a story of a god named Talal that splits its power among 7 masks. You play as an unnamed female protagonist that is the champion of one of those masks and is fighting to defeat the corruption of the other 6 masks before the power gets absorbed into the wrong hands. That is it. That is a very straightforward story, but somehow the game manages to make it feel very complicated and hard to track. The game has dialogue thoughts of the protagonist mentally narrating the fallout of every mission and foreshadowing something bigger that is to come that never feels like they truly transpire. After a while, I stopped caring about reading the text bubbles, and I feel like the game would have been better off without a story. Ultimately, the story is only used to contextualize why you're playing the game, but classic games such as Metal Slug and Contra didn't need a story. They just needed to be fun, and this game has that in spades. The audio is a bit of a mixed bag for me. On the positive side, the soundtrack fits the mood of the genre and the gameplay. As things become dire and you look like you're about to lose, the soundtrack punches up, giving more intensity to the game. On the bad, the game doesn't have a sound cue for when you take a hit, and if there is one, it is very hard to hear. It just feels like the game doesn't give any audio weight to its hits. The other bad thing is I can't remember any of the songs. There doesn't seem to be a strong musical motif in this game, so none of the tracks are particularly memorable. I just remember the feeling of playing the game with my palms being sweaty and my heartbeat pounding, and the music fits perfectly with that mood. There isn't much to say about the visuals. The game has a colorful, cel-shaded look to it. Environments are basic, but they would ultimately be distracting if they weren't. Level designs is straightforward because battles take place in a small arena. On the bright side, performance is never really a problem with a small level. There shouldn't be any frame drops or any performance issues for that matter. During my time with the game performed at a locked 60 frames per second at 1080p. Sadly, there doesn't seem to be a 4K option. This is the meat and potatoes of this review. Godstrike is first and foremost a twin-stick shooter. For those unfamiliar with the genre, a twin-stick shooter is when you use the 2 sticks of your controller to control your character. Generally speaking, the left stick is used to control the movement of your character, and the right stick controls where the character shoots. Examples of twin-stick shooters include Resogun and The Binding of Isaac. Here, it is no different. During the review, I played with an Xbox One controller, and I think I might have loosened up the right stick by the time I rolled credits. The forward face buttons can also be used instead of the right stick, however, doing so would limit your character to shoot in only 8 directions. As an example, the A button on an Xbox controller would have you shoot down, and the B button would have you shoot to the right. So if you were to press the A and B buttons together, you would aim diagonally to the right. In general, I didn't use the face buttons because using them felt limiting. However, using the face buttons at certain specific times were more advantageous because the Xbox controller has no notches, and aiming straight up was hard to do at times. Next up is bullet hell. This is pretty self-explanatory, but bullet hell games are games where the enemy sprays bullets all over the screen and you need to dodge and weave around them. Examples of this include games like Contra, Metal Slug, and Cuphead. Finally, there is boss rush, also self-explanatory, but this is where every level you play in a game is a boss fight. Some games can just be boss rushes, and others will include boss rushes late in the game. For example, Mega Man games have you refighting all of the bosses back to back at the end of the game. But examples of traditional boss rush games include Shadow of the Colossus, Punch-Out, and Bloodborne. This is where Godstrike comes in. The game combines all of these elements into one cohesive whole. The game is unrelenting as every level is a boss fight and every boss is very difficult to beat. As far as gameplay goes, the game doesn't have a traditional health bar. Every level has an allotted time that you need to beat the boss in. When you get hit, time is deducted from you. When the time reaches 0, then the next hit will end your run and you will need to restart the level. As you progress during the story mode, you unlock power-ups and modifiers. The modifiers can make the game much easier, such as increasing your shooting speed, your running speed, and increasing your damage, to name a few. The power-ups, however, do come at a cost. If you equip a power-up, then time is taken off your clock, essentially decreasing your health. Power-ups are mapped to the 4 shoulder buttons and can be mapped any way you see fit. During battle, blue orbs get dropped into the level and you need to collect them in order to use the power-ups. Some power-ups cost fewer orbs than others and are easier to spam. As far as HUD elements are concerned, the game is very minimalistic with your time/health at the top and the enemy's health is at the bottom. On the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, you can see a number of squares that represent the number of transformation each boss has. So if you see 4 squares, then prepare for 4 waves. As far as difficulty, the game doesn't have a difficulty slider. The game is just plain hard. Just to emphasize how crazy the game is, the game does feature an easy mode, and even then, I still lost a lot. Even from the first moments of the game, I started taking a beating because it took me 3 times to beat the tutorial. I've never played a tutorial like that. The game just sort of throws you into the fire. The game expects you to sink or swim. When I think of a tutorial in video games, I think of something that's easy and eases you into the difficulty curve of the game and teaches you about the mechanics. A lot of times tutorials freeze a game for you and then tell you to press a button and won't proceed until you do so. This is not like that, and the tutorial level is a boss level unto itself. For me, I pride myself on not playing games on an easy mode or taking a shortcut. For example, in the new Super Mario Bros. Series, the game introduces a power-up called the P-Wing. It only shows up when the player has died about 10 times in one level. When it spawns in front of you, you can collect it and you can fly/glide all the way to the end of the level, and it makes you invincible like having a star power-up. I always found that insulting to me because if I see it, I feel like the game is calling me a punk. I know that that's not the case because the game is also targeted at kids and it's good for accessibility purposes as well. Why do I bring all this up? Because after dying a lot of times, I saw the option to enable easy mode, and my first reaction was the feeling of being called a punk, just like the new Super Mario Bros. Games. But after an hour and a half of playing the same level, I relented and enabled easy mode, and even then, I still lost some more. The easy mode makes it so each shot you deal does more damage, and makes you lose less time when you get hit. It's crazy that even with those 2 things factored in, I was still getting punked by the game. The game is short at only 10 levels, but I'm happy to report that I was able to beat 2 of those levels without the aid of an easy mode, and I know this because the easy mode question never popped up for me. Also, side note, easy mode is only enabled for the level that you're stuck in. When you proceed to the next level, it gets taken away until you die a lot. As far as game modes, there are variations. There is arena mode that is unlocked from the very beginning, where you can go to any level, including the tutorial, and play it with any power-ups and modifiers, including stuff that is not part of the campaign. There's also a challenge mode where you have to take on a specific challenge, usually multiple stages back to back. There's a daily challenge mode where you have 1 shot at defeating 1 level with specific conditions. Lastly, there are online leaderboards. There's also the ability to integrate with Twitch, where if you pair your Twitch account to the game in the menu, your audience can affect your game. Ultimately, this is a short game. If you are just amazing at this game, you can probably beat the campaign in 30 minutes. It took me about 6.5 hours to roll credits, so your mileage may vary. The game has achievements, and some of them seem impossible to me. One of them was to beat a level without taking any damage. So, this game does have a good value proposition with replayability that emphasizes you perfecting your craft. My experience with this game was that of frustration, but the good kind. Every time I died, it was my fault, and I had to learn the boss's patterns and openings, and I needed to stop trying to force the interactions the way I wanted them to go. After a while, I learned to enter into the zone, and I say that with quotes, and just play the game. It was some beautiful moments of zen for me. Every time I lost, I just kept saying to myself, just one more time, and to my surprise, I never wanted to throw my controller, so the game was doing something right. Godstrike is a video game that focuses on gameplay first and foremost. The story is weak, but it could have just as easily been not integrated in the first place. The performance was steady and needed to be for the genre at play. The soundtrack and mixing got the job done, but otherwise were not memorable. Yet, the gameplay is king and was good at putting me in a concentrated trance. The The game gives you free reign to practice in arena mode, to take on harder challenges in other modes, and achievements that can keep you playing until you master the game. Godstrike is a solid game that knows its strengths and plays them well. I give this game a 7 out of 10. Godstrike is already out on PS4, PS5, Xbox, Nintendo Switch, and PC. The game retails for $14.99, but at the time of this publishing, the game is on sale on Steam for 60% off at $5.99, and on the Switch for 50% off at $7.49. At any of these price points, I feel like the game is a good value proposition. A code was provided by the publisher for purposes of review. The game was reviewed on PC via Steam. For more reviews, check out our reviews of Ghostwire Tokyo and Ruin Raiders. You can find me on Twitter at Chakalaka88, and my podcast is Ready Press Play, where you can hear my thoughts on all things gaming. Also, you can find me on this YouTube channel every other Tuesday on Cogs in a Machine, where we do deep dives on specific topics in gaming, so subscribe here as well. Thank you once again to the publisher Freedom Games for the review code, and thank you guys for checking out the review. I'm Louis Menchaca, and I'll see you guys later.